The Edible Valley Podcast, episode 198, Panic Shopping.
On this episode, what to have in your pantry in an emergency, the difference between hoarding and panicking, storing food, and caring about other people. Do you ever wonder where your food comes from? That's what got us started on this adventure.
In each episode, we ask experts to weigh in on the food topics that matter to you, from growers to producers to chefs.
And I challenge John, Darren, and you to learn more about your food and the stories behind it. From our hub on Vancouver Island in the beautiful Comox Valley, join us as we explore our edible valley. And good day to you. Welcome to the Edible Valley Podcast. This is, get this, episode 198. We're so close. It's the end of November and we are ready to go here. We've got a great subject today, but before I do anything, I want to wish someone here a very happy birthday. 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday. No, we're not gonna. Happy birthday, Darren.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So on this episode, you're the birthday boy.
Yeah, birthday boy. We're going to talk about cake. We should do one on cake, actually.
We should.
Yeah,
That's
a really good idea.
I know a couple people we should bring in to talk about cake. So
Yeah.
I think that would be a great episode.
That's it. Write it down.
Noting now.
Okay. So, firstly, there has been some movement this week on our social. Shall I introduce everyone? Actually,
Yeah,
Actually,
let's do that.
just.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to cut.
We have.
This is us. We are imperfect human beings.
That's what we do.
My name is William. I am the producer.
And as always, I'm Chef Jonathan Frazier.
And I'm Darren Howlett, the birthday boy, apparently.
Yay, that was an easy shoe-in for this one. So we've had some movement on our social media this week. Darren, talk to me about it.
We have. We've been putting up some sort of, I don't know, we've had a bit of a newer approach to our Instagram, and we're seeing lots of results. Lots of people are checking out Instagram right now. You can just look it up at Edible Valley, and we're pretty proud of it. I mean, we've got a bit of body there, but people are really interested right now. So quite nice.
You can DM us, and just we love engagement. So thank you so much. It really does. Even if you just smash like on one of the photos, we all get a notification, and then at that exact point, we're all going, "Aww." So you're just spreading something good, and so thank you. We are really, really grateful.
We should see how many happy birthdays we can get for Darren.
Yeah, and Facebook, you just name it, DM Darren, because he's not a happy camper about birthday. It's fair to say that.
I'm a bit of a grunt about birthdays.
Oh, right. So, So this week we are talking about panic buying. Now, this is a really, really interesting thing that's happened here in British Columbia the last couple of weeks. We have had record-breaking flooding. It's washed away infrastructure, and not going into the meat of that news issue too much, it has brought up the issue of panic buying and hoarding. Now, I would say that it definitely, from up here in the North Island, hasn't been as bad as it has in the lower mainland. The Vancouver area, southern Vancouver Island, Victoria area has been much more affected by it. But we thought we would do a really interesting podcast on hoarding and panic buying. But we said to each other when we first started, we did a little bit of research, and we realized that actually hoarding and panic buying are two very, very different things.
Right.
And we've decided we're going to talk about panic buying, because hoarding itself is actually a condition. It's based on anxiety, and the anxiety that it causes, according to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, affects 1 in 50 people. So 1 in 50 people have a hoarding anxiety.
Right.
I hope you're not eating for this, because hoarding at its very worst can mean someone can't even dispose of their own feces. They need to keep everything. There's a need to prevent loss. So that's hoarding, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about panic buying. Now, panic buying itself is totally different. And the key difference is panic buyers have a temporary urge to acquire things, but that goes away when the panic's over. They don't always have the desire to keep that. So that is the difference. And this show is going to be focused on panic buying, when you just get that urge that we all get. Oh my gosh, we need to get stuff in because the supply chain's stopped.
When you're that guy who's at the supermarket and you're piling every chicken you can find in your cart, or every last piece of bread or whatever, that's the part that you have to start thinking about. Do I really need all this?
Yeah. And
it's interesting to think about, like, what are the reasons? Why do we panic? Yeah. Why do we want to hoard all this food and keep it? And I've been doing my research, and just like there's like 4 good reasons. One is the individual perception of a threat. So you're worried about, like, what am I going to do? Yeah. How am I going to make it through the next little while? There's also the fear of the unknown, right? Mm-hmm. That's another one. Like, what's going to happen? Like, especially being in BC here, we're looking at the Abbotsford area being wiped out, and it's like, and this is interesting for me being a chef, and now my supply chain has tightened up, and it's like, are you going to be able to get chicken? Are you going to be able to get eggs, milk, like pork? All these things have all of a sudden, that there was a chain that was supplying it, have kind of like, these animals are gone now. So that's a little bit of a scary thing. A lot of panic buying is a coping behavior. It's to deal with your anxiety, right? Like, you're like, oh my God, the roads are washing away, like, there's no fuel, there's no this, and you just want to get more and more just to make sure that you're your thing. And then there is the good old media.
Yeah.
And maybe we're helping to this, because I'm getting anxiety right now thinking, oh man, I should have bought more chicken.
We're part of that.
We're part of that. But that is it. It's that social media aspect of it that you're like, you start listening on the news, and all of a sudden you're like, oh. And like, even for me, I'm like, I've got lots of stuff in the restaurant. I've got lots of food available, but I'm looking at it going like, and I start talking to my reps, and they start going, well, this highway just got knocked out, and that's our supply of beef comes from there. So I don't know where we're going to get beef from. And I'm like, I better buy all the beef I can get, and I'm like, wait, I don't need that. So that's a bit of a lead to it. So it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
How would you say would you say that it's worth in good times maybe storing things away?
You know what? I say you should always have a backup supply of food and water in your house, even a little bit of, as British say, petrol.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, when all this was happening, the kids and I were talking about it, and I said, well, I'm not too concerned, because we usually have about 45 days worth of food in the house. And I know I'm an anomaly. Yeah. But I don't hoard, but I like to maintain a level of security. And that's sort of, so I didn't go out and do any extra shopping in all of this, because I knew that was exactly what I was prepared for. But yeah.
So I think that's something we'll talk in a bit about, but like, definitely,
absolutely.
Like, what are those things you need to have in your thing? But like, right now it's the panic of the supply chain. And the fact is you brought up an interesting fact about Britain when they had a panic. I think it was you who's talking about it was
petrol.
Petrol, yes.
Yeah. Well, the petrol thing was interesting, and this, I don't want to date this podcast. I mean, there's always panic buying for something somewhere in the world, and I think John in a second is going to talk about briefly what are some of the reasons for panic buying, because most people listening to this, it's not going to be 2021, and they're not going to be in British Columbia potentially. So let's make this as relevant as possible, because a lot of people suffer from this. In Britain, there was a shortage of people to deliver petrol. I'm going to get into a slight area of controversy here, so I'm going to try to skirt over most of that. But and the media was focusing on them having to slow down the production because they were low on. I think BP said they had to slash the amount of deliveries to petrol stations because of a shortage of truck drivers, and then that went on to the media. The media said, or some parts of the media said, right, there's going to be a shortage of petrol, and then boom, the rest is history. Everyone started filling up their tanks. The government at the time was saying, folks, there's not a shortage of petrol. There's not a shortage. But, of course, that didn't do anything. Now, my opinion is here that they just need to instantly say that there's a limit. You put the limit in, and it makes it a lot more difficult to do that. But what actually happened is they said, there's not a shortage, so everyone is going to get petrol in the next, and so there's a shortage of petrol because everyone's filling up their tanks. But no, people aren't going on 10,000-mile drives.
Right,
We're not
yeah.
using more petrol here.
Yeah.
So everyone in the country basically has a full tank of petrol.
Right.
And in a few weeks, it's going to start to slide the other way. And of course, it does slide the other way. Suddenly, everyone goes, oh, there's petrol there, there's petrol there, there's petrol there. And very, very quickly, it de-escalates.
Right.
But of course, it is the same idea with food. But there are lots of reasons for panic buying. I've just said one.
Yeah, well, and that was the whole toilet paper thing.
Yeah.
Like, we can all remember the beginning of the pandemic, and it's like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
no toilet paper.
I know.
When they actually said there was tons of toilet paper, it's just the supply chain
Right.
was all confused, right? Because what it was is people were going to restaurants and using facilities outside of their own home. And now that they're locked in their own home, they're only using the toilet paper from the grocery store.
So
all of a
restaurants
sudden-
and all these other places, and not just restaurants, but all these other places, were still ordering as per normal, but the home demand had gone up a bit.
had gone up double. So if you were in the industrial side of getting toilet paper, which is big cases,
Right.
blah blah blah, no problem. But if you were a home buyer, there was none. So it's
Right.
quite funny, and it's hard for those lines to switch.
I know. I
sometimes.
remember getting glared at for going and buying my usual amount of toilet paper that our family requires every month, and it was one pack. And I remember getting glared at as I bought it, and that was the only thing I went in. And I just thought, like, there's hoarding, and there's just general use. Like, this is not me coming in for extra. This is just, it happened when we needed to be, and what have you. That's where I think that's where all of this started for me, is the concept that this would be a great future episode.
Well, you know what me and Eva did, all right, when this started? Eva, smart girl, 100% smart. I'm in awe of her smartness. She just said, let's buy a bidet.
Oh, right.
We bought a bidet.
Yeah.
We use a toilet roll every 3 months.
There you go.
Wow. Crazy.
Why didn't more people do this? Why didn't more people just buy a bidet?
Yeah.
It is so great. And I'm going to be a little bit crude here, but the people that I bought it is from a company called Tushy, and they have a T-shirt they give you with the bidet. It says, "Ask me about my butthole."
Oh.
And the answer is, it's really clean. Anyway, let's move away from that.
Hilarious.
So that's been a bit of if we can look at our situation too, I think, as we can talk about supply chain, because there's food out there. There's lots of food out there, but it's trapped in different areas. So it's getting it out. And a lot of things you're going to have to be like stores are going to get cleared out, and you just have to think about, don't get worried and think about what you're going to use within the next little while, because a lot of food you're buying and a lot of the panic stuff is the stuff that doesn't preserve for that long either, right? So it's something that has to be changed over every.
So what I would really like to know, and you seem like the sort of bloke that will know this, is in the good times, which is for us very, very blessed to be 99.99% of the time, should you have a hoarding plan? And how hoarding plan? That's the wrong way. Don't hoard. There's the plan. Storage plan.
You should. I think that is a definite thing. I think storing is it's just it's going to save you money. It's going to make sure that you have less of a panic. A lot of us live by, and it's easy nowadays to have the daily commute to the grocery store to pick up a few supplies. But I always like to be, and I remember when we were living together, Will, and in the beginning of the pandemic, we started doing the old runs to the grocery store together and picking up a couple bulk items that would that would hold, and then we
kilo and a half of Cheetos, as I remember.
We ate a lot of Cheetos.
But and I think too that if I can interject, I think that you don't need to become whatever Sally Homesteader or whatever. You don't have to now say, well, now I need to preserve everything so that I can be prepared for the future. But we are always prepared in my house, as I said, and but the things that we have, like I think I probably have 20 meals that are already prepared, ready to go in the freezer. But that's just because of our lifestyle. I'm not here at dinner time quite often, and I need the kids to be fed. But aside from that, I have the means and the means and supplies to make, 40 other lunches and dinners. And it's just a rough estimate. It's not exact whatever. But so for me to get to that point, to build that up, I was just adding a little bit more every time I went grocery shopping over the course of about, 2-3 months. And and now I maintain that level. I don't do extra shopping anymore at all. I'm just maintaining that level.
Well, and that's the thing too, is just to keep your product fresher. So having what you need that you're going to churn over. Like there's a lot of products that I'm going to go into this a little bit later, I think.
Oh, okay.
Just like products that you don't want to have because they only last for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that shouldn't be part of your storage supply things, where there's other things that you can have that can sit on the shelf for endless years and years. Like let's throw a can of honey up there, right? Like,
yeah.
But I have to laugh too, is because you're definitely more stocked up than a lot of people. Because when that last picture that we had of the three of us with Blaine, and
Speaking of
went,
Instagram,
where was that picture taken? What was the restaurant that came from? And I started laughing. I mean, that was Darren's pantry.
My house. Yeah, and yeah. I mean, there are, as you were just talking about, there are certain things that you don't want to hold on to for a long time. And freezer items, they don't last. My kids apparently think that is a time machine, because the second you put something in it, it's good until you want it again, and it's not. You got to cycle through your freezer items.
Oh yeah, I know. I've got an endless supply of egg whites in my freezer.
Is that still from when I lived there?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Have you still got them?
No.
Yeah.
I've been slowly.
All right, I'm going to start to
of,
pick them up. I
no,
actually need to make
I've gotten rid of lots of them.
Okay.
They are over a year old for sure.
So yeah, I think that as we're talking about preparation and being prepared, I think that there's the big difference. I think the reason that it becomes an issue, and I think the reason that we all get the anger comes into it, or rage fueled, is that a lot of people can see that you're taking away from the ability. Like when you go out and do this panic shopping, you're taking away from people's ability to buy for themselves the general necessities. There's a lot of people that aren't in your position. They don't have the means to get to the store. They don't have the means to buy things in advance. They need that regularity. They're maybe of limited means, whether that's accessibility, whether that's fiduciary, whether that's what have you. And then anybody that goes in and starts purposely disrupting that, you're really impeding those people's ability to get things. And we're talking about the people that are essentially in disadvantageous groups. I would say sometimes, quite often, the elderly are on a fixed budget, and they can't buy things in advance.
Think about food banks too.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah,
let's talk about how it affects food banks, because
yeah,
of course, with panic buying, as usual, everything flows downhill. So the people at the bottom are always the person who can't get in their car. Because they haven't got a car, so they can't buy tons of stuff. And when they do end up getting to the supermarket, it's all gone.
Right. And
so food banks are the people at the very, very bottom.
Right. They're relying on grocery stores to give them discounts on products that they're barely, that they can't barely move, or they're relying on charity. They're relying on a lot of things that, they're the last to in the long line of people to get served. And as soon as you start panic buying, they're no longer able to get those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have to look at, it's going to affect. And the food chain is too. Like, you got to think about all the steps of how food gets to you.
Yeah.
And so that's just farther down the line. And as you knock things off, I'm always amazed to think about how much food I have on hand in the restaurant at any one time. Like, I have, I bring in orders every second day or every day, basically, from different distributors, which has been affected. It's been kind of tough. But yet on those, I don't think I've run out of anything other than I would normally run out of due to bad ordering so far. So I've been very lucky, and we've had to change up a few products and stuff like that. But
little adjustments.
Yeah,
and I don't want to make it sound too that I maintain 45 days of food in my house, like regimented. It was at the beginning of the pandemic when there was the talk of that and people were panicking. Mm-hmm. I sat down and I said, well, assessing everything that I have on hand, between preserves, between things I've dried, between things I have in stock. And I sat down and I literally made a list of what I think it was a grocery list. And it came to like $100 of the things I needed to make 45 days worth of meals out of everything that was on hand and what I needed to supplement that with. And ever since then, which was almost 2 years ago now, I've just maintained that. Like, I'm not saying that, whatever.
Well, maybe we should take a quick break.
Sure.
And then we can actually talk about some things to have in the pantry. All right, well, welcome back. So I just wanted to spit out some little tips here for everyone about storing food, just to give you something to work on. It kind of goes along with our whole thing of not panicking, and gives you a little bit more life out of the food you have. So one thing I always like to do is make sure all your dairy products, store them in the back of your fridge. It's colder, you can have a little bit more life. Definitely, the cooler you keep them, the longer they're going to last. I always like putting meats on the bottom shelf. Best place, because if anything drips, it's not going to contaminate anything. So that's a food safe aspect of that. I always like treating my herbs like flowers, wrapping them with water, keeping them sealed. I find a Ziploc bag is an excellent way to keep things lasting a little bit longer. I also like wrapping lettuce greens. If you wrap them with paper towel, they definitely last a little bit longer. And I always say, don't wash your products till you're going to use them, because water is a killer on food. I know I've brought it up lots of times on this. And always remember to make sure everything is sealed in the fridge and date it. I always love dating things because you're always surprised, and there's nothing worse than opening that one tin and going.
It's very much a kitchen thing, isn't it? I find myself dating and just doing like 11-9. And yeah, he was like, well, what's that? What are you writing on stuff? And I was like, no, don't worry about it. It's fine.
But it's good. It's great because then you, if you do come across something and you're like, I'm a little iffy on this, but then you look at the date and you're like, yeah, you know what? I know that this is probably past its due.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's get back into what we were talking about. Thanks for those tips, though.
Yeah, well, let's start talking about things to put in that pantry.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up a couple facts, because this was the ones that got me. So I think when you're doing emergency prepping and stuff like that, they say that you want to think about having about 2,000 calories per day,
right,
per person in the household.
Okay.
Which I imagine most of us consume more.
Yeah.
Because we're North Americans. And
it's true.
Our little thing. The other fact that I brought up here that was really interesting to me is that they say that you should keep, for a family of 4 for 2 weeks, about 56 gallons of water.
Good Lord.
Which I was looking at. That's 212 liters of water. But if you think about that, that's what you need for all your day-to-day.
If we lost water.
Lost your water to have those things.
I used to, back when I had the food truck, I used to buy the water those, I don't even know what they're called, the massive water things for your, like water coolers. I did that because I was making iced tea and I needed a potable supply of iced tea water. And those were really difficult to lug around. And you're saying that I should probably have 4 or 5 of them on hand.
Sounds like that's what they recommend, right?
Wow. Well, okay. Well, again, I'm not going to panic. But over the next little while, I'm going to slowly.
We're going to see him down the store in a minute.
No. I'll slowly acquire one, maybe once every couple of weeks. Until,
and the other thing you have to think about where we are right now, and our emergency right now is flooding.
Right.
So if you're really desperate, you can stick a bucket out on the back.
What?
And just collect rainwater.
Collecting rainwater. Okay.
Where were you thinking there?
I don't know. I thought I was imagining some sort of dirty puddle, and you were like suggesting that. No, if you want to collect rainwater, for sure.
There's another. The other one is investing in a filtration device. Like they have those Life straws, or $20 or whatever,
right?
And they do a ton of water. I think they do 100 gallons or something ridiculous with one straw, and so that could be a thing. And just boiling water.
Yeah. Well, locally speaking, too. Again, this isn't a problem other people face. But we do have boil water advisories happen almost every year.
We are pros around here dealing with
our water. Our water source is close to some loose dirt and gravel in a road, and every once in a while we get a washout, and it's contaminated our water source. So we have to do boil water, and you'd think we'd have learned by now.
Well, I believe we haven't had it for a while, and I think it's because they have moved the water line deeper into the lake. Oh, so that has been a bonus for us for that. But definitely a tough one in the restaurant business when every table gets a glass of water and you're all of a sudden like, like we can't boil. Yeah. You think 100 people, 2 cups of water each. That's a ton of water. So
literally, I think that's probably about a ton of water.
Yeah.
So anyways.
So here we go, Darren.
Mhm.
What are some things that we should have as storage? And I always I found this great list that was like
Sure.
of emergency pantry items that you should be looking at. And that's like meats and beans.
Yeah.
Because there's your proteins, right? Vegetables.
Yeah.
Milk and dairy.
Mm-hmm.
Grains.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, water, which we just went over.
Right.
But those are all great things to have in your
Yeah.
in your
Well, I
pantry.
mean, I think we talked about frozen veggies like an episode maybe 50 or 40 episodes ago, 30 episodes ago.
Yeah.
We talked about frozen veggies and how I'd never really actually bought them. And then now that I have, I actually find them quite useful. So there's a great way if you have a couple of those in your freezer, as far as, talking about preparing and storing. If you have those veggies or veggie blends or whatever it might be, but if you have that bit of vegetable in the freezer that's meant to be there, not like
I always like to keep a bag of frozen peas.
yeah, I mean, who doesn't? I always have a bag of frozen corn too.
Yeah, bag of
Yep.
frozen beans, peas. I mean, not only this, you get hit in the face, you got a nice little cooling thing, but also the fact that you just throw them in a pasta or
Yeah.
rinse them in some fresh water really quick and you toss them in a salad.
I'm like that right now. I bought probably, I don't know, a couple months ago. I bought a squash, a chopped butternut squash frozen. And at first I was like, I passed it a million times and thought that's ridiculous because we're going into squash season. But then I'm like, do you know how often I love making a curried squash soup? And I can't do that during, other months so often. Or if I want to spruce up a curry, or if I want to whatever. I mean, the reasons are endless why I'd want it in there. But yeah, okay. So I agree with you on those. What about meats? What are you thinking there?
Well, I mean, you've got a bunch of options with meats, right?
Mhm.
Like it's definitely getting a hold of some meats and freezing off.
Mhm.
I mean, here's a great cost-saving one.
Sure.
Is buying a half a cow from
Yeah.
a local vendor, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a great opportunity. You get a bunch of different cuts.
Yeah.
You get a bunch of different. It challenges you to do something different with it too, right? Like
Yeah.
And I think that's part of being in a situation is being able to modify and play with your food and
Yeah.
bring that slow cooker out and try braising something.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you are buying a half, you are going to get some of those tougher cuts. But yeah, if you're looking forward in future planning, you can make plans around those tougher cuts with your slow cooker. And,
Exactly.
and then I agree too with the beans. We've become very bean reliant recently in my family, just because before it was like, oh, I got to hide them, and now we make beans, definitely a part of the meal where we're getting our protein, we're getting all of our nutrients that we need, and putting some focus on it.
Beans are great in two aspects. So the one is that if you can get dried beans, so they don't
Yeah.
take up a lot of room, and they're great to rehydrate them.
It's crazy.
That's part of your 200 liters of water.
Yeah, right.
If
I
you
can't
think
believe
about
it. So when I rehydrate a thing of chickpeas,
Yeah.
I know this little bag that weighs like a pound. Literally, I think it's a pound. And you have to add a lot of water. But like my yield out of that, I'm not that everybody's making the same thing I am, but I get like 90 falafel patties out of that little $2 bag of chickpeas. It's a great thing to have on hand in your storage, in your pantry.
Exactly. So many uses for it. And
Yeah.
and it lasts forever. Or
Yeah. Exactly.
maybe not ever.
Yeah,
I
but
wouldn't
yeah.
recommend it, but at
Yeah.
least having it around for a while. The other is canned goods.
Yeah. Right. Canned goods.
I was laughing today because I wrote this down. I
Mhm.
have to read it out. I don't know
Sure.
where I wrote it, but it was like the can opener, or oh yeah. So canned food first came out in 1810 was when they first started.
I know where you're
doing it.
going with this.
And then the first can opener wasn't until like 1885
Is
or
that
something.
right?
Like
Yeah.
Wow.
We went so
eight-
long
1858.
without
So it was
a
like
can opener.
40
That
years.
that's funny.
Right. Yeah, and that's why you see in those old cartoons where you see like they just use like a pocket knife or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's actually how you used to open a can.
That was all you had.
Yeah.
Anyways, I laugh about that. So I would recommend in your pantry having a can opener.
Yeah, if you're going
Definitely.
to stock up your pantry with canned goods, make sure you have a good can opener for sure. And then I would add there for alternatives for proteins too. I quite often, like we eat a lot of nuts or nut-based things, and for those, I make sure that they go in the freezer. Like any backups of nuts, I make sure they're in the freezer.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great idea. And I was also thinking there's other ways. There's other things you can keep too, like stocks and that was in the what are the Tetra Pak?
Yeah.
Is a great preserving, and it's a great like filler for you.
Yeah.
Like throw that with a bag of rice, some pasta, some fresh stock. You can thicken it up. Like having all those things are available.
Yeah, I
are a
mean, you
great
can
thing.
make a quick soup out of them too, and yeah, they last generally between a year to a year and a half. So yeah, I always have at least. I think I've got 6 on hand right now. So.
And if you're really prepping and you really want to be up on it, it's nice to have all these raw products. But then you can also go for freeze-dried products as well, which are a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
But you can buy a case, like a 16-liter crate online for 42 hours or...
Oh, really?
42 hours is like $200 or $300. So if you think about it, it's like $10 or $12 a meal. And there you have this jug that you can just pop out and pour a little water in, and you've got an instant meal. And usually they keep up there with your daily requirement of food there. So
wow, that's amazing.
that's an interesting way. And then the other one we were talking about, if you're really hardcore, what are they called? The military rations.
Oh yeah, right.
We were just talking about this.
That's right. We were talking about MREs, meals ready to eat.
Yeah.
The military rations. Our town is very close to a Canadian Forces base. And so we've always had that military element in our town. And yeah, as soon as you said that, I thought that'd be great. We should look into that.
Yeah. That was, as a kid.
Yeah.
I was a Sea Cadet. So
yeah.
I ate many of those. They'd send us on overnight hikes and sailing adventures. And
Yeah, I'm really excited to dig into MREs. I want to look into those more.
Yeah, and there was some terrible, but I feel like the food's getting a lot better nowadays.
Yeah, okay, so these are great. These are some great tips on how to avoid. And I mean, I don't know. I know you don't have any stats in front of you, but off the cuff, what do you feel is the best? Like, what do you think is? Am I over the top by having 45 days worth of food?
You know what? I think you definitely want to have at least 72 hours.
Yeah,
like that.
Everybody should.
But I'm pretty sure that's a case of beans and a bag of rice, right? Like if it's that dire, I think you should be okay. And a jug of water, right?
Yeah,
like
and I will say to this end too that a lot of people, it's about money, that they feel that they can't do, they can't build up a storage or what have you. And which I completely empathize with. I 100% empathize with. I was just talking to somebody just the other day, and they know that I'm somebody that spends a lot of time in the kitchen. And I said, I can't get through the week without a food plan now. I need a food plan. I need to sit down and plan my food, just because I have a catering business. I have kids that I need to feed. I have all these other things and more that require food. And I was going to the grocery store usually twice a day for the last 5-6 years. No joke. That's not a hyperbole. At least 2 grocery stores a day for the last 5 or 6 years. And now I go to the grocery store once a week. And that's by now that I've really implemented this food plan. But it also affords me to not double up where I don't need to, or accidentally purchase this, because I'm taking that time to plan out all my meals, to plan out everything that's going to happen. And then it also, I have very little waste left over because I'm sitting down and managing it before it even happens. So I'm like, oh, there's going to be some leftover of that chicken. Oh, you know what? I'm going to make a little curry dish with that chicken. Or there's going to be a little leftover of this. I know what the leftover is going to be, so I already know how to repurpose it the next day. And that's where that extra budget came from for me to start building up my pantry.
Well, and I think that's one thing I wanted to bring up, because I saw this great video of things that you shouldn't stockpile on.
Yeah.
And it's basically because a lot of these things go rancid pretty quick.
Right. Nuts. Right. That's why I was saying you got to put them in the freezer, because if you just have them lying around, they're going to go bad.
Exactly. Perfect. The other one, and you know what? Like, you can still eat these things, but it's just something to think about. Crackers are something that definitely go off after a little bit. Like, there's oils in them, and those oils go rancid after a while. Granola bars.
Yep.
Peanut butter.
Right. You're mentioning a whole bunch of things that I think, honestly, the lay person, they might think, no, we're covered. We got some stock of backups. Like, you're talking about all the things that actually would immediately, You don't want to rely on those things for very long.
Yeah. I would have just thought, it's sealed, it's foil sealed, no problemo. And that's interesting.
That starts going, I have like oatmeal here. That's one that can go off. Baking mixes. So like, biscuit mix or something like that, pancake mix. They're great to have, and they last for a year.
Yeah.
So have them on
But
hand.
yeah, quite
but-
often those will have like egg in them and such that's been dehydrated.
Exactly.
And that's going to go bad over time.
So if you want to, have that stuff, but don't plan for 15 years of
Wowza.
things. Save some money. Yeah, chocolate only lasts for a year.
Well, you know what that means.
Yeah,
Go and eat all your chocolate now.
Mm.
Because it's at risk
Yeah.
of making you sick later.
This is Darren's, and if not, it is his birthday, so drop it off.
Yeah.
And the last one was flour,
Yeah.
because flour should be turned over. So
Yeah.
know,
so
and-
yeah, if you ever see the big bag and you're like, oh, what a value. It's the same as this little bag. And you're like, why would somebody opt for the little bag instead of the big bag? Ask yourself how much flour you use. Because if you're buying the big bag and you don't use it in that, 6 months, 5 months, if you don't, it's going to go bad, and you're probably going to attract pests.
yeah, exactly. And I realize I don't use a lot of flour.
Yeah.
I buy stuff that's already pre-made, like a bag of bread. Like I usually don't make my own bread, and
I got quite into bread making a little while ago. But yeah.
I always like it. But it's
Yeah.
fun.
All
So
right.
those are great. Those are great. Thanks.
Okay, so there
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah, ultimately.
I'm kind of hungry, actually.
Yeah, I
I
was
don't
genuinely
know
thinking
when
that
I was
too.
like, I want to go make some biscuits. And
Yeah,
But
fantastic.
yeah, I mean, I guess if you were to summarize everything, panic shopping, while understandable, here's some great ways to avoid it. And think of your fellow man. Think of the people around you.
What's
Think of
that
the
one from the
people in your
Second
community.
World War. What was that? Keep calm.
Just keep calm and carry on.
Yeah,
Keep
Yeah.
calm. Carry
Yeah.
on.
sure.
I think
Yeah.
that's part of it. I think we can think about that. I think there is. I mean, definitely for us in this area, we are lucky because we live in a food community.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking back to even though our episode with Blaine the other day, there being up in Haida Gwaii and
Yeah.
the food up there, and I know he got trapped in Rupert trying to get back there the other
yeah.
for a couple extra days. So like supply
Yeah.
chains can get
Yeah.
hindered, right? But there's usually
the best way to combat it is by being prepared.
being prepared a little bit, and start your own garden. That always helps too.
Absolutely.
Do
I
in
think
your
that's a
own
future
garden.
episode. I know we've talked about gardening before, but I think we're due for another one soon. Especially, I think when spring rolls around, we should talk
Yeah,
about gardening.
well,
again.
and that starts now, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
the preparation. So I will say, we will definitely have forgotten a few things, or we just haven't covered a few things. It's a huge subject. We'd love to know what you have to think, and you can write to us on Facebook, Instagram. Get in contact. You can email us as well. What is our email address?
We are the ediblevalley@gmail.com.
Job done. And we will we're going to put those any facts that you send us, we'll chuck them in on the beginning of the next episode as well. So there you go. You can help. Thank you so much for listening to us today. It's been really good having you along. My name is William. I am the producer.
And I'm Chef Jonathan Fraser.
And I'm once again Darren Howlett, birthday boy.
Thank God he doesn't have his birthday suit on.
And that wraps up another episode of the Edible Valley podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thanks goes to the local businesses that help support our podcast. They make it possible for us to showcase your local food community. We'd love you to follow us on your preferred social media at Edible Valley, where you can check out our blog, find recipes and tips, behind the scenes, and of course keep a lookout for where we are going to turn up next in your Edible Valley.
So if you are talking, yeah, if you are talking, you don't need to engage with me, but you do need to be aware at some point. Let me move things on.
And this has been an Edible Valley production.
Yeah. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, ready again?